with John Sowers, Client Relations Manager at Yellowstone Landscape.
It's kind of like this. Like, I look at a restoration company, John, and I say, okay, I'm going to sign up with this restoration company. So if a hurricane hits, they're going to be on my property. But there's a couple of background things I'm going to do before I sign with that restoration company. And one of the questions I'm going to ask them is all your equipment here in Florida, or do you have some out of state that can be brought in and is ready to be brought in because maybe the place in Florida where the equipment's kept also gets hit by the hurricane? So in terms of speaking like that, if I'm going to go hire a landscaping company, you guys have a lot of equipment that you use on property. And this is the other pros of using a larger landscaping company such as yourself, because you don't want to hear that, oh, that equipment's broken down this week. So we're going to come back on a different day and inconvenience you, or maybe it's not going to get done this week, whatever that may be. Let's talk a little bit about that part.
Yeah, obviously, being a larger company, we have the ability to where we do have a lot of, and it's backup equipment, or backup vehicles, trucks or so forth. That is something, again, we touched on, everybody wants to be a landscaper in the winter. A lot of that is, it's a bi-weekly schedule in the winter months. So it's not nearly as demanding of a pace. But in the summer, if a truck breaks down or a mower breaks down, you're automatically behind the 8 ball because your schedule, the grass doesn't stop growing just because your mower broke. So that's a big thing with some of the larger companies like us that have the resources and have the capital to have extra equipment on standby for that reason. The other part of it too is I personally like to call it, we call it the accordion effect. And what I mean by that is, look, Florida is known for hurricanes. So, and we have branches across the whole southern half of the United States. We have multiple branches in Texas. True story. We had hurricane hit Houston and sit right on top of Houston just a couple of years ago. We sent resources, meaning employee personnel and equipment, as you touched on, Kerry, from Tampa, from Atlanta, and then I believe from Jacksonville to Houston to help them out intentionally, because obviously they had massive cleanup efforts. And that then was reciprocated back because less than a month later, Florida got hit by a hurricane and Houston sent us backup and assistance with employees and equipment. So that accordion effect makes a big difference and helps, because ultimately, as a property manager, and that hurricane's bearing down, their number one thing is safety and making sure, how soon can they get out and get things cleaned up? Is there going to be obstructions across roads, things of that nature? That is something that I would say Yellowstone's is set apart from other companies, because we have a great operating procedure on that, and the way we can move equipment and people around from different states and different markets to help with natural disasters like that.
What is your procedure with a community that you work with? If a hurricane does hit the area, are there things that you tell them, this is what we're going to come in and help with, or this is what we're going to take care of?
Yeah, ultimately, a lot of times, depending on the severity of the hurricane, Kerry, I mean, if it's a Category 5, who knows what's going to be.
You know what, John, though? Tropical storms hit here sometimes, and they hit the right area, and it's just as bad as the hurricane had hit, So you just never know.
Well, and let's say you reference as a general hurricane and it comes across the coast or, comes across the state. That's something where typically, if it's depending on the hurricane, is going to provide a lot of rainfall. So we're not going to want to try and come out and put mowers or equipment, even if there wasn't a lot of damage to begin with. So typically our standard procedure is, look, a storm has passed through. The first thing we're going to do is our management team is going to be out as soon as it's deemed safe and out and assessing our properties. We're looking for downed trees. We're looking for any type of, geysers from irrigation, being busted or whatnot. Anything that may be another liability or, to the property. And then we're going to have our crews deployed by obviously the severity. If a community has a tree that's down across the road and that's not being handled by the county or the municipality, we're going to get guys out there ASAP with chainsaws and get that thing out of the way, at least so that there's, a clear and free roadway. And we supplement in a lot of those, like I said, with the regular scope of service, because we can't really mow that week anyway if we've gotten that much rainfall. So, we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna assess it on an as needed basis and go as quickly as we can to each property. But we'll have usually within 24 hours after the storm has gone through. Again, once it's deemed safe, but we'll have a pretty good idea of which properties are more in need or in dire need of us to send resources there, first versus third, because the account managers have already been through the properties, looking at them.
Talking about a lot of rainfall, the lady next door has her grass cut by a little service company. They send 3 guys over and they're done just like that every week. And I've noticed that even when it's heavy rainfall, and I think to myself, I would not want a heavy mower going across my lawn right now. So Chuck and a truck are going to be more apt to they want to cut your grass because they're getting paid every time they're there, kind of the thing. Whereas you guys are going to say, wait a minute, guys, there's been way too much rainfall.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it has to do with, when you're dealing with townhome communities or villas, things where there's buildings next to each other, especially that have drainage swales that cut down and they don't necessarily, maybe in townhomes, but they're 2-story buildings. They don't necessarily always provide a lot of sunlight between those buildings. So, after heavy rain events, it doesn't even have to be a hurricane, but it all comes back to our big thing with Yellowstone is communication. And we're going to communicate with the property manager or the board and let them know. And it's not something that we're intentionally trying to skip or get out of service or push something to our bottom line. It's a matter of, if I take a piece of equipment through there, it's going to look like a mud bog pit by the time we're done. So we're going to take that time and energy and we're going to go focus on pulling weeds, trimming plants, doing other things and services that need done in the community. That way, when that area does dry a little bit or firm up the ground a little bit, we will then go in and mow it. And again, it's not something that we're doing to try and get out of, because ultimately it takes us longer to mow it once it starts getting really tall, and we have to it slows down our production rates. But that's, again, it comes back to communication. It comes back to good horticulture, and that's, we do see some folks out there in the industry that will say, they're just going to go ahead and mow. And when they're done, it's striped up and down their community. Yeah. But unfortunately, those are deep, muddy ruts that now they've left in the grass. So that's really the biggest thing, is it all comes back to communication.